All right, so as we begin Antony's funeral speech, there are a couple of things I want you to know. Number one, this is probably one of the most epic speeches in all of literature. It is rhetorically brilliant. Antony gets up into the pulpit and he does not say bad things about Brutus and the conspirators. He does not immediately obviously try to turn the crowd to his way of thinking. Instead, he just talks on his side, agreeing with the conspirators, but in a bit of a sarcastic way. And this is what's going to win over the crowd. Now, I want to remind you, in Act 3, Scene 1, Antony approaches Brutus. Remember, he asks if he may speak at the funeral. Cassius is very against it, and of course we should be listening to Cassius because he's the brains of the operation, but we don't. Brutus says Antony's not going to do anything bad. It's going to be completely fine. But Brutus does give Antony 5 requirements for speaking, and you're going to need to know these for your quiz. And the reason why is because Antony will fulfill all of these requirements when he gets up to speak, which is another thing that makes him so brilliant, because he does exactly what the conspirators ask of him and still turns the crowd. So the 5 things that Brutus says, these are the things you have to do, Antony, if you want to speak at the funeral. You may not blame the conspirators. You may only speak good of Caesar. You must say that you spoke here with our permission. In this way, Brutus is trying to get Antony to admit to the crowd that they are more powerful than him. You have to speak after Brutus, again with the power, and you have to speak in the same pulpit. Pulpit is just the place where they're speaking. You have to speak in the same place as us. Basically, they ask him to do that so that it looks like they are all unified, not divided. So these are things that you need to know because Antony is going to fulfill all of these things. The other thing I want to remind you of is that Brutus left. After he gave his speech, the crowd is now completely for Brutus. They think killing Caesar was the best idea ever. They love Brutus. They don't even want to hear Antony speak. We hear the plebeians say, oh, what is Antony going to say? We don't want to hear him, basically. And Brutus is not there. So whatever Antony says, there's nothing Brutus can do to defend himself because he, in his pride, decided to leave. So keep these things in mind, and we're going to go ahead and get started.
Oh, let us hear him! Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it was so, it were a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man, and so are they all honorable men. Come I to speak.
Okay, so already you see that Antony is saying, Brutus said that Caesar had to die because he was ambitious, and remember in the play, ambitious means greedy for money or power. Caesar had to die because Brutus was ambitious. But he says, and if Brutus said it, he is an honorable man, so are they all honorable men. Now you're going to hear this line repeated in the speech over and over again, and that is rhetorically effective because at this point he is saying something and the people are agreeing with him. Yes, he is honorable. But what's going to happen is Antony's going to start saying good things about Caesar and then say, but Brutus says he was ambitious and Brutus is an honorable man. And the people are going to start questioning, even though he is complimenting Brutus the whole time. So listen for that.
In Caesar's funeral, he was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man.
At this point, some of the crowd is still agreeing that Brutus is an honorable man, and some of the crowd is getting quieter, as you can tell. He was a good friend to Antony, but Brutus says he was an honorable man. I'm not so sure. He brought the captives home to Rome. He went and rescued the soldiers that had been captured by the other army and brought them home to their families. But we killed him because he was greedy for money and power. When poor people cried, Caesar cried with them. But he was greedy for money and he deserved to die. I'm not so sure about this. The commoners are starting to question.
You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and sure he is an honorable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here
That was an ironic line. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, because really he is. Remember, Antony is the brains of the operation.
I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? No judgment. Thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason.
Okay, so this point, the crowd gets silent because they feel so guilty. Because Antony doesn't say it was wrong to kill Caesar. He does not blame the crowd. He does not blame the conspirators. But he does say, don't you remember when you loved him? You loved him, and now you can't even mourn for him? And Antony gets overwhelmed with emotion. And the crowd begins to feel guilty. Antony employs guilt here. And he doesn't obviously employ it, but he does, because he says, when you loved him so much, you can't even mourn. You're going to celebrate in the streets over his death. And he's going to say, judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts. And he's going to need to take a moment just to mourn. And in this moment, the crowd will get to contemplate their behavior and their attitude. And you're going to see a very interesting shift.
Bear with me, my heart is in the coffin there with Caesar. And I must pause till it come back to me. Methinks there is much reason to be saved.
Thou consider rightly the matter Caesar did great wrong.
Has he, masters? I fear there will a worse come in his place.
In his words, he would not take the crown or desert. He was not ambitious.
If he found so would fear a bite
His whole soul, his eyes are red as fire with weeping.
There's not a nobler man in Rome than Antony. Antony, the word of Caesar might have stood against the world. Now lies he there, and none so poor to do him reverence. Oh, masters, if I were disposed to stir your hearts and minds to mutiny and rage, I should do Brutus wrong and Cassius wrong, who you all know are honorable men. I will not do them wrong. I rather choose to wrong the dead, to wrong myself and you, than I will wrong such honorable men.
This is so brilliant. Antony says, wait. He hears the crowd stirring and getting restless and getting kind of mad at the conspirators. And he says, oh, don't get mad at the conspirators. I wasn't trying to get you mad at them. I wasn't trying to do any wrong. If we're going to be mad at anybody, we'll go ahead and just be mad at the dead. We'll be mad at Caesar. And this is very rhetorically effective, a little bit of reverse psychology. So be thinking about that as you are reading this speech. And I will come back with the next segment of Act 3.